Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll fans. I'd like to thank the theater here and the staff for inviting me to come out and tell you a few stories and what exactly happened. In 1966, I'm in my first year of college in Southern California, and I started going down to Sunset Boulevard, photographing the hippies down there. And around early September, they started talking about some kind of riot they wanted to have on Sunset Boulevard, Friday night. So I went on down there the following Friday night, and they certainly had a riot on Sunset Boulevard. They took over the whole Sunset Strip, no cars were going by. What happened there was, they took over the Metropolitan bus, started breaking the windows, got on top, pedestrian signs. I was in the middle of the crowd. I had to hold the camera up above my head and shoot it. And then after I got done, I said, I'm getting the hell out of here. But I figured I had something good because I had worked with United Press International a couple of years earlier on some photos. Called them up and they said, well, we already have photographers here from this event. And I said, well, they don't have what I got. So I told them what I had, and he said, well, get on down here, downtown LA, to their office. So got in there, processed the film, and it was still wet. The guy walked out and he goes, I'll buy this one, and this one. Okay. Next morning, it's the front page of the LA Times, 4 columns wide. I go, whoa. I didn't find out till many years later that it was actually the front page photo in the United States that Saturday morning. A few weeks later, Stephen Stills from the Buffalo Springfield at that time saw it and saw what was happening. He wrote the song, Hey Stop, What's That Sound, Somebody? Well, I forget that came out in January of '77. So I'm at Pierce College, I'm a photo editor. And one day I'm in the darkroom in '77. I like rock and roll. Got a good idea. I'll bet if I call some record companies up, tell them we'll do some stories in the college newspaper, they might give me free records. So yeah, in the '60s and '70s, I never bought an album. What happened was the first record company was Elektra. They came back to me. They said, we got a group called The Doors. They're in Sunset Sound Recording Studio, recording their second album. We'd like to invite you to come down, spend a day with the guys. So I was nervous as hell. I never done anything quite like this before. So I decided, I'll shoot available light and I'll be like a fly on the wall. Pulled up into the parking lot on Sunset Boulevard there. Jim Morrison is leaning on the brick wall. Parked the car. I was with a buddy. He was going to interview. We were taking notes. Walked up to Morrison. I introduced myself, and I told him while I was there. He goes, yeah. Okay. It was lit. So I went on in, introduced myself to Paul Rothschild, was the producer of the Doors' first couple of albums. They knew we were coming. I spent like 6 hours in that recording studio that day. Man, what sound came. They do the playbacks after he did a couple of voiceovers. It was just amazing. Also at that time, Uncle Sam was looking for some people to go to Vietnam. So I didn't want to be on the ground in Vietnam, I joined the Navy Reserves, thinking, they're going to put me on an aircraft carrier in the photo lab. Well, I started active duty March of '68. They interviewed you. What are we going to do with this guy? Well, I had some letters of recognition. So the guy said, oh, I know what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to send you down to San Diego with Pacific Fleet Combat Camera Group. I didn't hear the combat camera group part. I heard San Diego. 120 miles from home. Yeah, that's cool. Got down to North Island, San Diego, and they said, well, you know, you're going to go over to Vietnam for 180 days. You know, shoot pictures. So, yeah. 69, I went over there and was on. The nice thing about what I did over there was I wasn't in one place very long. Do this, do that, go out, meet this ship. I was on the Kitty Hawk. I shot the last photos of the battleship New Jersey. One nice thing, being a photographer, everybody treated you like you were royalty because they wanted those pictures to be good. So I got, when I was in Vietnam, I felt like I was a ranking officer because I was an E3, but I had those Nikon cameras around me. So that was good. Well, I got out in January of 1970. And I was so happy to be back in one piece, I didn't do a damn thing for a year. Just chilled out. 71, I got married, had to go to work, right? Well, I got an opportunity to go to work with the Valley News, full-time daily newspaper. Did that for about a year, and since I was the last one hired, they were going to cut some staff, so I lost that job. But I had a couple of contacts, and I knew about a guy that owned a studio in Hollywood, PR company, Vanguard Photography. So they hired me right away. And then that first year, doing a lot of PR pictures for big clients in LA and Hollywood, I decided I want to get back into this recording business stuff. So I started calling record companies, and they started hiring me here and there. Then January '73, all of a sudden we heard the Rolling Stones are going to play in a couple of nights. Benefit concert for Nicaragua. Had an earthquake. He was married to Bianca Jagger at the time. So the group, I guess, decided we'll do a one-off concert and all the money will go to that. So I called up the record company, but they didn't really know me. Well, you got to call Gibson and Strongberg PR people. So I did that. They knew about me for a few years, but they said, James, you got to represent somebody here. This is a big show. So I said, okay, well, let me call you back in a couple hours. And I started thinking, oh yeah, I did some stuff with UPI a couple of years ago. So I called them up and they go, get the hell down here, man. We'll give you the letter you need and they'll let you shoot the concert. So I did all that. Next night at the concert is Cheech and Chong, Santana, and the Rolling Stones. So I got to the concert, went backstage. The PR people said, you guys can shoot, Cheech and Chong and Santana, but when the Stones come on, you can only shoot 4 songs. And I'm with Annie Leibovitz, you know her, photographer, and a photographer from the Times, LA Times, and the Herald. So it's 4 of us. So I had 3 cameras with me. I said, I'm just shooting the hell out of the first 4 songs. What could I do, right? So shot those, and then he came out between the songs and said, let's get the hell out of here. Going backstage, a hand gripped me on the back and goes, James, you're here for UPI tonight? Go back in there and shoot the rest of the show. So I did that, and I remember that night so clearly. I think give me a water. Thank you, sir. Get dry mouth too.
They called that cottonmouth when we were young. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. Been a long time since.
So by 6 o'clock in the morning, I had the black and white film process I did myself, and I go, damn, this looks good. And I go, well, I got to print some pictures for UPI. I promised them I'd give them some prints to run. And I got to get the color film down to the lab to get ran, processed. So by 11 o'clock in the morning, I picked that up, and I go, again, damn, this looks pretty good. So I brought it back to the studio, loaded it up into a slide projector. Back then you didn't have this and digital. You put the slides in the projector and put them on a white screen.
Speaking of slides, we're still back in the 60s.
I know it. That's right. I'm sorry about that. Let's go forward here. There's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Come on, let's get the slides on.
I'm sorry. This is the doors. That's it.
Yeah. Who are these guys?
All right, let's just go through this. I'm sorry. Okay, so with those first pictures, you want me to go back a little? Okay, well, I told you. Okay. I told you I was in the studio with the doors. Yeah, okay. All right. So that's it. These are the pictures of the doors in the recording studio. And the recording studio there was right next to a liquor store. You can see that. Yeah, that's right. That's Paul Rothschild standing with Jim Morrison right there. This picture was taken a year later in the back of a limousine. I was in the Navy, it was '68, home on the weekend. There was a concert that night in Santa Monica Civic, and Jim's in the limo. And this is about 5 in the afternoon. I was with a guy interviewing him. And some of the limos, I don't know if they still do, but this is the very back seat of the limo, that sometimes they had a jump seat right in front of it, went up and down. So I just sat right in front of it there and took about 3 or 4 photos. Turned out to be one of my favorites.
Did that go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah. Most of these photos that you're seeing tonight are in the permanent collection of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Okay, this is the concert for Nicaragua. That particular picture right there, 1 year later, was my first poster with One Stop Poster Company. It was 42 by 58 inches. And this is those first couple of songs. I'm just banging filming. Mick doing his thing, right? One of the hardest people I've ever photographed on stage because he moved all the time. And back then, you didn't have autofocus. So, you know, what I remember mostly about shooting Mick Jagger was I had to keep focusing.
Was that Keith Richards we saw?
Yeah.
He actually looked young once in his life, didn't he?
This is Led Zeppelin, and it's 1 month later, February of '73. I told you how I contacted some PR people trying to get back into the music scene. Well, about 3 weeks after the Stones concert, I got a call from Marcia Hightower, who was Led Zeppelin's agent on the West Coast. She said, "James, you told me you wanted to get an updated group photo of Led Zeppelin. Well, we're going to make that happen 2 nights from now. Meet us at the Continental Riot House Hotel on Sunset Boulevard." So I went there about 6:30 in the evening, introduced myself. I noticed right away that the boys were not quite straight. A lot of liquor was being served. There they are. That's their manager, Peter Grant. Peter was an intimidating visual image. 6'6", 450 pounds. I saw him throw people off stage, okay? So these are a couple of the shots. Now, what happened was I couldn't get the guys to get together. That's why it became so hard for me to take this picture. I talked to Jimmy Page. He wasn't too coherent. Robert Plant went in the other room and grabbed another drink. So I went up to the manager and I said, "You know, I'm here to take a group photo. You know, that's what I want to do." And he says, "Is that all the bloody hell you want to do?" He picks Jimmy Page up and sits him in the chair there. Then he gets the rest of the boys to sit around. And, you know, I took about 8 or 10 shots. Well, the black and white one I showed you a few minutes ago, that became, a few weeks later, that was their official Led Zeppelin press photo for 1973. This is some of the concerts in LA. There's another one of the group photos. And I think down in the lower hand corner here, you see that box and that drink? That was my camera bag and my drink. I told you I had a couple of drinks before I got stuck. Kind of relaxing. All right, this is a few months later. They did Kezar Stadium, and I was, you know, let's bring James up to Kezar, fly him up there. And I noticed when the show started, I was on stage sitting on some speakers, stage left, I guess. There was a bunch of pigeon cages in the back. So I knew right away they're going to let those go sometime. So about halfway through the show, sure enough, they started flying out. And by God, that one just came on his finger. It was there for about 3 seconds. And got that shot. And I got the opportunity, I think in 2003, through a friend, we gave him a 16 by 20 of that photograph. So it's now in his home in England. In fact, a lot of the stars I photographed that you see here tonight, they all have personal prints. But in a 2005 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, one of the questions was, well, Robert, what was your favorite picture? And bingo, that was it. So that worked out nice.
Also in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah.
One of the best pictures there.
It's Jimmy in LA, the Forum. These pictures all happened within, as far as the concert shots, you know, within a few weeks. This is my first Led Zeppelin poster I did with One Stop Posters. We put this out in '77, I think. And this particular picture was my best-selling one. I think we sold over 300,000 copies of this. This is going back to the Kezar Stadium again. That's a famous promoter, Bill Graham, with his son sitting on his shoulder there, 73. People just chilling out backstage. Going back to the Rolling Stones concert, there's Cheech and Chong. Sorry I didn't put all these quite in the right sequence, but there they are.
Oh, it's an ambulance, man.
There's another one backstage at Kezar. This is about 74. This is Alice Cooper on his Rolls Royce. He was at the radio station in Hollywood, you know, promoting an album. He came out to leave, and I told him, you know, just kind of lean into the car. And he started leaning more and more, and that's it. This is Ray Manzarek from The Doors, 1974. The Doors were broken up by then because of Jim's death, and Ray hired me to do some albums that he was working on. So we did the album cover, and this is a PR picture. What's that guy's name in the background? I never remember. He's an actor. He's still on TV. George Siegel. That's George Siegel, 1974. He actually played a little banjo, whatever that is there, on the album. Joe Walsh played on that album. So it was taken the same time. Yeah. This is a publicity shot. Remember I told you I was working with MCA Records down the street from the studio? And that's a Billboard award they gave her in '74. So that's your action. You know, that's like a good PR picture right there.
Say the name.
Olivia Newton-John, you don't recognize her? That's Olivia Newton-John. There's Dick Clark in his office on Sunset Boulevard. Wow. Beverly Hills Hotel, 1974. Johnny Glitter. Anybody ever heard of him? Well, actually, he was in the news a few years ago over in Thailand doing some bad things, right? That's him. And the girls in that shot are famous Hollywood, you know, girls. Record company. It's Jackson Brown. Jackson Brown in the studio, 1974, RCA Studios in Hollywood. Johnny Winters. I told you about the lady Marcia Hightower? That's her on the left. Johnny liked to party. So, you know. If any of you folks out there remember Martha and the Vandellas? Big song, what, 66? Dancing in the Streets was her first hit. This is in her apartment in Hollywood, 1974. One thing I always found out about people recording music, they're always trying to make a comeback. Some of them do, some of them don't. All right, here is Ray Manzarek, Iggy Pop, and Danny Sugarman. This is 1974. Danny Sugarman was the Doors manager. Mark Bolan, T-Rex. He had just signed a recording deal with Casablanca Records. This is Neil Bogart, president of Casablanca. His first offices was right off Sunset Boulevard. He had taken over a home, and out back was all this lush garden, and he actually had a full-size statue of a camel, because that was his logo, Casablanca Records. Was that Peter Townsend? Probably around 77, at a party. Stevie Wonder, this is 1975. What happened was in late 74, I got a phone call from a lady who I used to work with at MCA Records. Her name was Michelle. And she called me up one day and she said, "Hey, what happened to you, Michelle?" And she said, "Well, a year ago, I married the president of NARM, the National Association of Recording Merchandisers. They're still going today. So once a year, they'd have a big convention. Every record company in the world was there. And they have famous artists come in, perform, make appearances. So this was a after party in 75 at the Century Plaza Hotel.
He said Elton as the piano?
Yeah, we got that coming up. This is 74. Elton John started to become real famous. And he's got Billie Jean King. You know, they got together and started doing some promotions with tennis, and that's Helen Redding on the right. Remember Helen Redding? Well, this is her home in Bel Air, and I got invited to come over there and take some pictures. This is actually a shoot for the album cover of Ray Manzarek's '74 album.
I was there.
Shot with a fisheye lens. Okay. This is April of '75. I got a call from a girl one day. She said, "Paul's coming to town for the Grammys." Not the Grammys. I was lagging behind the manager. But let me go back to that picture. Luckily, I had loaded everything up. I had the strobe on, and he entered. That's Robert Hilburn, the LA Times, sitting down there with his hand going through his hair. And right at that point, the guy introduces James Fortune to Paul McCartney, and as soon as he did that, Paul whipped into that Gypsy Rose Lee pose. And I just shot it, because I was pre-focused, I was ready to go. Because he only held that thing up there for about a second or two. But I got it. This is a few minutes later, Paul gets in the pool with the kids. A little while later, he's drying off. When I was told the shoot was over, about an hour, loading my bags up, Paul yells out, "Hey James, I want you to come back tomorrow, and Linda and I will do some more posing for you." So that's one of the shots the next day. He pulls out the gold album for Band on the Run. Then I had an idea that week. I called the press agent up and I said, "Paul's leaving town on Sunday, going back to London. Ask him if I can shoot a family photograph." They come back and Paul says, you can do it. Meet him at the bungalow and before he gets in his car, he'll let you do it. So I got there and his helpers came out and said, Paul's in a hurry. He's going to give you about 1 minute to take this photo. All right? Damn, what am I going to do? Well, we've got a nice shade coming from the bungalow there and a nice California green. So I said, as soon as they walk out the door, man, I'll just pose it. And that's what I did. And within 1 minute, I think I shot 8 shots. Thank you very much, Paul. He jumps in the limo, he's gone. A month later, Paul orders 6 16 by 20s of that photo. So all his family members, I'm sure today, have copies of that. This is 1 year later, Band on the Run in LA. Funny little story about this, during the concert, he probably did about 5 or 6 songs, he was into it, and he stopped and grabbed another guitar, and I'm leaning on the stage, about 15 feet from him. He had the live mic on, and he just looked right at me and he goes, hello, James. 20,000 people are going, who the hell is James? But Paul knew who it was. I knew who Paul. Interesting story. Bob Marley. I never heard of Bob Marley. In 1976, I'm shooting an arm convention in Miami Beach. It was unusual because all the years I did in arm conventions, there was never like a small show. There was always a big dinner, big show, party afterwards. In this particular hotel, the Diplomat in Miami, it had a little nightclub on the main floor. And Island Records was just signed this gentleman and the band. And they said, late tonight, about 11 o'clock, go down there and get some pictures. So of course I did, and they kept bathing in this red light. And that's not good for me because that's 2 f-stops I have to open up. And I go, well, what the hell? I'll do my best. So I shot the show, played for about 40 minutes. There's about 40 people in the audience. Nobody knew about Bob Marley, except the record company. So he finishes the songs, and I'm starting to put my camera in the case, and he goes, hey, man, who you work for? So I'm an arms photographer, James Fortune. He goes, oh, you like to join me in the band out on the beach? What the hell? Yeah, I had my camera case. And this is one of those things when you look back and you go, why didn't you do X, Y, and Z? But we got out on the sand there with the band, and Bob pulls out one of the biggest joints I've ever seen. So my whole deal there was, I should have taken my camera out and put the flash on, had Bob Marley with that huge joint in his hand. But I didn't do that. But it was an interesting evening. There's a couple more shots from that. Red light, red light. Who's that? Okay. I'm having a blackout here. Can't remember his name. Eric. Very much. This is about 77 in the record company office. One thing I hated to do, they always wanted pictures of the singer and whoever the record company personnel was. It's like a static shot, right? But I always like to do things differently. So I said, hey, why don't you get your face down in that bush right there? Take a couple of shots. So he did. He jumped right into it. Harry Belafonte? No, that's Jethro Tull at Forum. Oh, okay, here. No, that's not it. This is, let's say, 77, Barnum and Bailey Circus hired me to do the show. And what was unique about that particular show in LA, Cher was the ringmaster that night. And Cher and I went back to the Sonny and Cher show, the first time I started photographing her in 1970. And over the years, in the 70s, Cher would hire me to do special little projects. And I would never see the film because I shot it, give it to her that day, get a check in the mail a couple of weeks later. So she has all these pictures that I've never really seen. And an interesting story is, I think you all remember she married eventually Greg Allman. And they had a baby, right? Well, in fact, a few months before, my wife and I went, she hired me to photograph the shower. So I brought my wife, and we had a little baby at the time. Got a little older. But, you know, I have pictures of Cher holding my daughter, et cetera, et cetera. But I've never seen those pictures because she got the film. Interesting story about that. When I'd like walk out of the restaurant, there's like, you know, these paparazzis waiting for Cher to walk out a little later. I think some guy from the National Enquirer said, "I'll give you $1,000 for the roll of film you just shot." I don't have it anymore. I gave it to Cher. So she was a ringmaster that evening, and it had all these Hollywood folks, actors, actresses, got them on elephants, paraded them around. And of course I was backstage they were getting their makeup on them. I got a lot of great pictures that evening, but that's like one of the highlights. This is Fleetwood Mac, early '76, that big album they did with the white cover, sold a couple of million copies, and they were getting, it was a luncheon, they were getting their gold album. And you know, that's the Bugs Bunny, that's Warner Brothers logo. So we did the regular shots, and I said, "Hey Stevie, you need to hug the Bugs Bunny." So we took a few like that. A couple more of her.
So that's Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham.
Lindsey Buckingham, that's right, that was taken right at the same time. This is Miss Donna Summers. This is in New Orleans, 1978. And she was big business, selling a lot of records then, right? Hot stuff. Nice lady. This is, you know, maybe 2 hours before she went on in the afternoon, just relaxing. All right, now we get to Halloween night, 1974. Record company said, you know, Elton's in town, I want to shoot it, of course. And shot a couple of nights there. And then what happened was, I was with the, you know, doing business with the poster company. So within a week, I had an Elton John poster on the market. 13 photos, 42 by 58. About a week after we published it, I'm driving down the street, lunchtime. There's a record store down the street, and I saw a young lady walking out of the store with that poster. And I go, "Oh, this one might really take off." Well, it did. About 2 weeks after that, Elton John's managers were on the phone. They want to know why Elton's not getting any royalties. So they respected the fact that the poster company was worldwide and we could move some product. And we signed a contract. And about a month after that, a distributor in the Midwest had a deal with 7-Eleven stores. And that Elton John poster started rolling. 20, 30,000 a month. It got quite crazy. That was The Who, the last shot. This is Peggy Lee. In '76, Paul McCartney wrote a song for Peggy Lee. And they recorded it together in the studio in Hollywood. And of course I was there to take the pictures, but about a few days later, Peggy Lee's agent called me up and he said, "Well, Peggy was kind of impressed with you with Paul the other night. She wants to invite you to her Bel Air home and would like her to just take some photos." So, well, I spent the whole day with her. Beautiful lady. So she did like 4 changes of clothing, just crazy. B.B. King and Bobby Blue Bland. This is after a concert they did together about '78. And here again, you know, I don't want those static shots. You guys get together, kiss each other, whatever. This is Thanksgiving Day, '76, Winterland. This is the band's Last Waltz. It was filmed, it came out a year later as The Last Waltz. Neat concert. The band did a few numbers first, and they got Bob Dylan on stage, and followed by a whole bunch of other people. Nice event. There's Michael. What happened was, the New Orleans concert, on the convention where I showed you Donna Summers a little earlier, well, the Jackson 5 performed at the convention in New Orleans, and that was Michael at 18 years old. This is a shot, I think, around 77. Whoa, where am I? Oh, okay. This is a rock and roll award show, and there was like famous recording artists together in different like, and of course I call this the two queens. This is also an arm convention, '79, I think. Willie Nelson. Back to Donna Summers again. That was her two co-managers. Donna was in a good mood. Also '78, the Village People. Bunch of wild and crazy guys. All right, going back to the '75 NARM convention, the last night of the convention, they had these parties late at night after everything was over. So I'm up in this suite of rooms, and in this, we got about maybe 45 people. And in that room, there was these guys, plus Barry White, and about 5 other artists, and they had just won a bunch of the NARM awards. That's what those trophies are right there. So I just lined them up, make sure I got, big name people in those shots, because NARM would want to use the photographs in like Billboard, Record World, those magazines. Jimmy had just performed a concert at the Universal Amphitheater in LA, and backstage with people. I said, damn, he's drinking a margarita, I gotta get that shit. Last year, I sent 3 of these prints out to his management company in Beverly Hills to sign. I donate pictures to charities around the country. And the deal was he was supposed to sign all 3, send them back to us so as we could, give them to the 501c charities. But damn, they only sent 1 back. What happened to the other 2? Jimmy wanted to keep one, put it up in his house. And the manager wanted one too, so I got 1 back. Okay. This is '79 NARM convention, Miami. And as I told you, I've been working with Cher for a long time, but at the time, that night, they were dressed just like that, and they gave out the NARM awards to all the people that won. So the after party, they put them on the side of the room, and of course people wanted to start posing with them. So I'm setting them up right there, and taking a couple of shots, just the 2 of them. And side of my eye, I noticed there was a guy from the hotel walking around with a big plate of chocolate eclairs. So, knowing Cher for a while, I knew I could get away with this. So I said, Cher, you got to share an eclair with Gene. So that's what they did. They got a couple of pictures of them nice and close like that. Same night, getting his award, Meatloaf. Meatloaf. Rick James. This photo was taken in '79 at the Playboy Club in LA. It was a record company party. Rick James, I don't think, had a record out yet. Maybe he was on the verge of it. But that guy, I knew right away he was a wild and crazy guy. So that's one of the shots I got of him with the bunny. Peaches and Herb. This is about '77. They were doing a tour of around Hollywood, Cashbox, Billboard, Record World, and in the limo again. And I just got a couple of nice shots of them. So people asked me tonight about some of these people. This was Hoyt Axton's, did a TV show around 78, and Hoyt Axton invited me to come down and shoot it. So Hoyt Axton was real friends with Ringo and Mickey Dolenz, and Keith Moon was there, and the guy on the far left had is really a famous country western. Huh? I don't know, maybe. But anyway, they kind of got crazy in front of my camera when they were taking a break. Recognize a few of those people? Chris Christopherson on the left. These are all their friends, they hung out, you know. Mickey Dolenz was always sticking his head in some of my frames. Okay, her name was, last name was Andrews, and she was Ringo's girlfriend for about 5 years in the early 70s. And that's why she was there. Kenny Rogers at an ARM convention, probably 78. Recognize some of those boys, right? This is kind of an interesting deal. The record company president, the guy in the middle, I was doing a lot of work with ABC Records at the time. He called me up one day, he says, "James, I want you to photograph my son's bar mitzvah. And we're going to have a party at the house afterwards. We'll have a few friends over." They were there, and then he said, "You know, I'm going to present them their album." So they posed for me there. A couple of wild and crazy guys, too. And speaking about that, there's Keith Moon with Brian Wilson. And you can tell he's wild and crazy, because what's he wearing there? A robe? He just got out of the shower? No, this is a party. Beverly Hills. But Keith Moon, for the birthday party, I guess the record company said, you know, who would you like to, you know, come to the party? And they had people like Linda Lovelace, a couple of other folks. But at that party that night, do you remember the movie Sting? And Robert Redford had that pinstripe suit on? Well, they gave him that suit that night for his birthday. And then every time I see him, after that, he was wearing that suit. It's Eric Clapton, 76. All right, back to an ARM convention. This is 79. What's unique about this photo is you got the Bee Gees and their brother Andy. Great bunch of guys. Right in that disco era, right? Iggy. Years later, this became an album cover, 1997. It's called California Bleeding. This was shot in 74 at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And his manager said the day before, "James, come on down to Whiskey, I want you to shoot. Iggy's gonna be a little crazy that night. You know, I'm telling you right up front, so I want some good photo coverage." Well, I took Michelle to the concert, and we're parked down the street, and there's an ambulance parked in front of the Whiskey. It's unusual. My wife said, "Why is there an ambulance there?" And I said, "Well, Iggy might go too far tonight." And what he did was he started stabbing his chest on stage, so that's blood. And he got into the audience, rolled around. It's crazy. Iggy Pop. This picture is probably one of the best ones in the collection. This is Amy, who you just met a little while ago. That's Amy. And ladies and gentlemen, that's that presentation. Thank you.